तापहारिणी. The subject of discussion for today is the secret of Om. I remember to have discussed this. Some time back we studied Udgitopasana. I have taken up the stories from the Upanishads. As part of that, we discussed this Udgita Upasana, and also a long time back, the significance of Om, why it is so sacred, what is Omkara Upasana, what we will gain by doing this Upasana, why this monosyllable is so sacred for Hindus. These points we have discussed, but I think long back. So memory is very short, and the spiritual ideas, they don't get rooted in the mind that quickly. You have to listen again and again. You have to reflect, and then something gets stored up there. And afterwards comes sadhana. First Shravana, then Manana, then Nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is the third step. First Shravana, listening, then Manana, cogitation. You listen something, you observe something, then you think on that again and again. Then the idea gets rooted in your mind, and something of that gets translated into action. Then practice comes. Without intellectual conviction, practice doesn't come, right? So intellectual conviction precedes the practice. Without any idea as to why you should practice and what you will gain by practicing something, you will never embark. You will never actually come forward to put something into practice. So these ideas, they are eternally new. The spiritual ideas, they don't become obsolete. They don't become outdated. They don't become old. As many times you hear, still you feel like hearing. And also it's a kind of absorbing the spiritual thought is also a kind of sadhana, but preliminary sadhana you can say. So the secret of Om, the science of Om. Shabda Brahman. In our Sanatana Dharma, what is Om? It is Shabda Brahman. Brahman is God, God expressed in sound form. If you have to condense God into a sound form, if you have to express God in a sound form, what is the most suitable sound that represents God the best? If people thought on this, then through sadhana they found it's not just an intellectual conjecture. It's not that they just imagined some word and some monosyllable and then gave it to us. They experienced this. So we just discussed that. Swamiji actually had given a beautiful talk, Swami Vivekananda, in his I think Bhakti Yoga talks on Om. Wonderful explanation is given there. So today, most of the ideas that I'm going to share with you are from that chapter of Om by Swami Vivekananda. The form and the name are inseparable. Okay, the world has a form. We have a form. The form and the name are inseparable. First, actually, it is name and then the form comes into existence. This universe, the gross manifested universe, the universe of name and form that we see, has a sound behind that. Today modern physicists say that how this universe was created. They say Big Bang happened some 4 billion years back. There was a huge ball of mass and then that exploded and then actually started expanding and still it's expanding. And then that's how actually the universe is created. But if you ask the question that who put that ball of mass there, okay, the problem with science is there. You assume things. So who put that ball of mass there and who ignited it, who made it explode? We don't get a satisfactory answer. It just exploded, they say. There was a ball of mass and that exploded, big bang. Bang. Bang means what? Sound. With a bang it exploded. Now when such a huge explosion takes place, creation of this universe is not a small thing. Billions and billions of galaxies are there. So what must have been the size of that initial ball? If it was a big bang and the ball that got exploded, what could be the size of that big ball? It must have been huge, mass, huge ball. Otherwise, these many galaxies and these many stars all from a single ball. And that sound must be a huge explosion. Okay? So, but our philosophy says it has a different version, different theory of origin of the universe. The God, actually the Lord, consciousness is the infinite. So this universe is infinite not because actually there was initial ball and that exploded and still is exploding and it's moving and moving and moving and that's how actually universe has become infinite. It's not like that. The creator of this universe, God, is infinite. Whenever we use the word infinite here in our culture, we mean something which is beyond time and beyond space. That alone can be the infinite. That which is in time and space can never be the infinite. So, to understand something infinite is very difficult because to understand anything we have to use our mind. Our mind is limited by time and space. You can understand things, you can imagine things, you can grasp things, you can comprehend things, only that which exists in time and space. We use this word infinite very casually. Oh, God is infinite. What do we understand by the word infinite? You can't understand because your mind is limited. So what we mean by the infinite is this. It is beyond time and beyond space. There is no temporal limitation and there is no spatial limitation. Okay? The universe exists up to this point. We cannot say, we can't draw a line. That's what our idea of infinite. No, the limit is not there at all. It is not there. But your mind imagines some limit. It wants some limit because it is limited. The instrument is limited, not actually the universe is limited there. The creator of the universe is not limited there. There it is the infinite. When you want to grasp the infinite, the limitation is coming from your own mind. The mind is actually drawing a line and it says that universe must exist only up to this point. How can there be something infinite which has no boundary? But that which has no spatial limitation, no temporal limitation alone can be the infinite. So infinite cannot be grasped by the mind, which is limited by time and space. Because the creator is infinite, consciousness is without any temporal and spatial boundaries, he could create an infinite universe. Where you can't say the God exists up to this point, the consciousness exists up to this point. Consciousness is everywhere there. However much you can travel in the space and he is there. You can be on an eternal journey, but still you will not be able to find the end of the universe because it is the infinite. And from that infinite, the world of name and form, which we see, the physical universe has come into existence. From the subtle to the gross, manifestation, effect. God actually is the cause, the universe is the effect. From the cause, the effect has come. Universe actually is vibhuti, his expression. The manifestation of an idea that was there in God. He wanted to create, he wanted to have something of physical, and then a thought might have appeared in that cosmic mind, and then universe has come into existence. So between God, between this infinite consciousness and this manifested universe, the gross universe, something else has happened. Okay? Now say, for example, you want to construct a house. Now you want to construct a house, you bring actually bricks and everything, and suddenly the house will not form, right? You need to have a drawing. You need to have a blueprint, how you want to go about it. You need to have a plan, right? Without that, you cannot do what you want to do. The effect actually is a building. Before that, there was an architect, and architect actually draws the plan, and all things have to be done. In the same way, the gross has not just come into existence just like that universe. Okay? Though the idea existed in God, before giving shape to this final universe, before this universe has come into effect, a sound symbol, a sound actually happened. Not the Big Bang kind of sound, but another kind of sound, very deep and sonorous sound, which is Omkara. This is called, in our culture, Anahata Dvani. That Dvani is still there. Not that actually at the point of creation of the universe, that sound existed and afterward the sound disappeared. The sound which has produced this universe still actually is there in the universe, but we are not able to hear it. Why? Because of the din in the world. The world is today such a cacophony and din, all the sounds constantly. So they bombard into our mind through ears. And so all the time the noise actually is happening in the mind. That's the reason that subtle and the deep anahata dvani, which is always there in the universe behind this manifested world, we are not able to hear it. We are not able to listen to that voice, but it is there. And the yogis hear that. The fundamental sound, the primordial sound, the sound that exists since the beginning of the universe, the yogis hear because yogis make their mind still, they make their mind quiet. Once you attain to that state of equanimity and that quietude, then you experience that sound within yourself, here itself. In this universe, it is there already. So we can make an experiment after going home. Actually, you close your ears. Make it a habit. Every day 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You increase the time, 15 minutes, 50 minutes, half an hour, and then make it 1 hour. And you will also hear it. When you completely close the ears, all the sounds from outside actually are stopped. And then you will hear a fundamental sound, that anahata dvani, is constantly there, a very subtle sound. And that sound actually is the kind of software, you can say, that universe actually is the hardware. And from that sound actually the universe has come into effect. Why only Om? Why not some other sound form? So for that, our rishis actually have given a scientific explanation. What is that? See, when you utter sound, when you utter a word, so all the creatures that have speech, animals also, they make sounds, but only a few sounds. But because God has given us the privilege of speech, we make different kinds of sounds. And all the languages also have come from God only. So everything, the alphabet is more or less same in all the culture, in all the languages. So when you utter something, the sound making operators, you just see from here, from throat to lips, right? So they have taken up 3 sounds. First they say have taken up the A. When you utter this letter A, so you have to use your throat. So this is the first letter, the gutturals, gutturals, which you use. The throat you have to use to pronounce, they are gutturals. So A. From where the sound comes actually, from the throat comes. Then oo. Oo is a rolling sound. From throat actually it rolls down forward up to the lips. Ooh. And then comes the word ma. This is the last sound of the labial, where you have to use your lips to utter that. Ma. So they have taken up the 3 letters. So whole sound producing apparatus from throat to lips they have covered by taking 3 letters out. A, U, Ma. So the last letter of the labials and the first of the gutturals and this rolling oo. And so this A, U, Ma, if you utter very fast, Oma, 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 and it becomes Om. Those are least differentiated sound symbol. If you remove the differences between A, U and Ma, and A merges into U merges into Ma, then a sound emerges out of these 3 letters, that is Om, which represents all the sounds in the universe. This is the most generalized and least differentiated sound symbol that represents all the sounds that exist in this universe. And this is the primordial sound, the first sound, when the universe is created, when the universe is projected. And that's why it becomes very sacred. And now what we want to do as spiritual seekers and sadhakas, we want to go back to the source of our being. Right? Source of the universe is God. We want to go back to the source of our being. We want to go back to the source of the universe. And to go back to the source of the universe, from gross to subtle you have to go. So this Omkara is a kind of bridge between this world of name and form and that world of consciousness, from world of that infinite God. So from the gross to the subtle, subtle to the subtlest, from stula to sukshma, sukshma to the sukshma to sukshma, from the gross to the subtle, subtle to the subtler, and then to the subtlest. The subtlest is the consciousness. So holding on to Omkara, whoever actually does this upasana of chanting Om constantly and regularly, and they will be able to go deeper and deeper into their own being, and ultimately they will touch the consciousness. They will have that samadhi experience and they will have that ecstasy. And this, the Omkara, they said, actually it is the essence of all the Vedas. Okay, the essence of all the Vedas you find in Sama Veda, Sama, Gana, they say, which you sing, you chant. And the essence of Sama Veda is Om. That's why Om is very sacred and it is the essence of all the Vedas. You don't have to read all the Vedas if you just want to do Upasana, if you just want to do Sadhana. You just do this Omkara Upasana, Omkara Sadhana. Of course, you need to have Vairagya also, dispassion. Then you will attain Siddhi, you will attain spiritual perfection, you will attain enlightenment. So, the first sound, the spota or logos or word Swamiji uses, spota, anahata dvani, the English equivalent word for the anahata is spota. So, when vispotana, when something actually explodes, something comes suddenly from subtle to the manifested and gross plane, a sound form is created, and that sound actually is this Omkara. So, this is the primordial sound, this is the first sound. So, whenever you want to understand things, for example, I utter a name, let us say, what happens when I utter a name? I just produce some sound. Immediately the form flashes in your mind. Okay, when I utter a sound, I utter somebody's name, you know and I know. So, what happens in your mind actually? The person's form is projected. So, the sound and the form, Nama and Rupa, are that intricately associated, they are inseparable. So, the Rupa actually the gross expression of the Nama. First it is thought, then it is word, and then it is form. Thought is the subtlest, and then it is word gross, and the grossest actually is the form. The form is not the reality, the thought is the reality. And so, even this universe we are not experiencing really out there. The universe doesn't exist out there. All the experience of the universe is happening only in your mind through thought, and then word comes, and then the form flashes in your mind. So, the experience of the universe is happening in our own being. The whole universe is happening only in the minds of the people. If there is no mind, if you are in deep sleep, do you experience universe? In deep sleep state, you don't experience universe. So, the universe exists only in your mind. All the experiences are happening only in your mind. So, this Nama and Rupa are connected to each other. So, spiritual journey is always a journey from the gross to the subtle and subtle to the subtlest. So, we want to withdraw from the world in a way, withdraw in the sense that we want to withdraw our mind, the attention of the mind from the gross world of name and form, and we want to find out the subtle consciousness from which the world has come into existence. So, from the gross to the subtle, what happens? Why should you go? Because this world of name and form is differentiated. It is varied. There is you and there is me here. It is limited because now all our problems are because of the identification with the body and mind, because this is limited. Whereas that which is the source of this universe, since that being non-physical, that being beyond the name and form, it is too subtle and it is infinite. It is beyond time and beyond space. And that state actually is our real existence. So in Mundaka Upanishad, the sadhana is given. Pranavo dhanuhu sharohi atma brahmatal laksham uchyate. Pranavo dhanuhu with pranava or omkara. Omkara is the other name, that is pranava. Omkara, pranava or udgita, they are three one and the same. Pranavo dhanuhu sharohi atma brahmatal laksham uchyate. Apramattena vedavyam sharavattan mayo bhavet. Apramattena vedavyam sharavattan mayo bhavet. So, pranavo dhanuhu, taking this omkara as the bow, sharohi atma, with your mind actually as the arrow, you need to aim at what? What is the goal? Brahma. Brahmatal laksham uchyate. With God actually is the goal you want to reach. And how you want to reach? What is the sadhana that is available to you? Pranavo dhanuhu. Take this omkara for bow and your mind for arrow, and shoot this arrow of the mind towards that Brahman and attain to that. Apramattena vedavyam. And you need to be very alert. You need to be focused. And then what you will attain to? Siravattan mayo bhavet. When you shoot an arrow towards it into a target, and this arrow goes into actually and merges into the target as it were, right? When you shoot an arrow, arrow hits the object and then it merges into the object. In that way, the mind is the arrow, and shoot it using the bow of pranava or omkara and into the Brahman, and then you merge into the Brahman. In single mantra actually they give the whole upasana. So this omkara, you hold on to this and keep repeating it, the omkara regularly, and get some taste, relish doing that more and more, okay, and develop this passion, and you will attain to the Supreme Brahman. This is the simplest sadhana that is available to. But do you really need Brahman? Okay. Do you want God? Do you want to attain to that highest state? Kathopanishad talks about it as state. Sarve Veda yat padamamananti tapamsi charvani cha yadvatanti yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena bravimi om iti etat. Sarve Veda yat padamamananti. Pada, it talks of. Pada means state, a realm, a sphere, an existence, higher than this present existence, higher than the present mundane existence. This is a very despicable existence. The present mundane existence is. An existence which is based on the body and the mind is far inferior existence compared to our true existence. Bhagavata says, Kva ayam atma navaschadihi. Where is this body? Krimivit bhasma vishtantam. This body is full of what? Bacteria. Okay, and our facial skin, actually, there is a billion bacteria is there. There is more of bacterial genome than human genome in our being. Krimivit bhasma vishtantam. So after death, what happens? We burn the body. What will remain of this physical body? Only little ash. Kvaidam tucham sariram. Where is this tucha? Where is this sarira? Kva ayam atma navaschadihi. Where is this atman? Which can cover even the entire space with its brilliance. There is no comparison at all. This present existence, body-based and mind-based existence, and that state, that realm, which is possible for all of us. The problem is we hear that somebody has attained self-realization, Buddha has attained nirvana, but we don't ponder deep on that. Why did he seek nirvana in the first place? Why did he strive so hard for nirvana? Why did Ramana Maharshi work so hard for self-realization? Why Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa wanted to have God realization in this birth itself? Why he was so eager? Because this is the instrument, the supreme instrument that you have got. And with this instrument, and the highest possibility, the highest thing that we can have is the source of the universe, the creator. Is it a small possibility? What are we as part of the creation? Too small, right? Insignificant. We are just a speck. As part of the creation, as a physical entity, we are too insignificant. Absolutely addressless entity this being is. A little force from this physical universe is sufficient to knock us down. Okay? That's so frail, so fragile, so transitory this existence is. From this transitory existence, to graduate to that existence, which is the source of the universe, and to become one. And you have become the creator. This drop can merge into the ocean. That is the possibility. And the drop must seek to merge into the ocean. If drop remains as a drop is nothing. Drop is a non-entity, whereas the ocean is a phenomenal entity. So this non-entity can become that phenomenal entity, namely the Lord, through yoga, through sadhana. So that's why India is a yoga bhumi. Our rishis never cared for money, never cared for power, never cared for name and fame and popularity, because they knew that the highest thing that one man can attain through this instrument is this God, the Supreme. That's why Sarve Veda yat padamamananti tapamsi sarvani cha yadvatanti. All penances, all ascetics speak about that state, that realm, that Brahman, that consciousness, that nirvana, that kaivalya, that mukti. Yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti, desiring which people practice self-control. Tatte padam sangrahena bravimi. That state I explain in brief to you, Nachiketa. Om iti etat. What is that state? Om. Yama says to Nachiketa in Kathopanishad, that state is Om. I am explaining in brief to you. You don't have to, hear a long talk about that. Om. This Om itself is that state. O Nachiketa, hold on to this Om. The son of Om iti etat. The same idea is echoed in Bhagavad Gita also. Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusmaran yah prayati tyajan deham sayati paramam gatim. 8th chapter, Akshara Brahma Yoga. Om iti ekaksharam brahma. If you have to represent Brahma in ekakshara, in one syllable, in one letter, this is Om. The Lord is saying, Krishna is saying in the Gita. Vyaharan mam anusmaran. By uttering this Om, mam anusmaran, whoever remembers me, when yah prayati tyajan deham, at the time of leaving the body. If an individual, if a man utters this Om, he says, Lord is saying, sayati paramam gatim, That sadhaka will attain to the supreme state. The question is, will we remember Om at the time of departing from this body? For that sadhana is required. That should be the predominant samskara in your mind. Why we are asked to do sadhana? Otherwise, you just remember God, remember Om and utter Om and leave the body, that you will merge in God, you have attained to the Supreme. But is there any guarantee that we will utter Om at the time of leaving this world? At the time of our last breath? Will we be able to remember this? No. That samskara, which is the predominant samskara in your mind, that comes onto the surface at that point of time. So you have only worldly samskaras we gather actually very carelessly, in this world. There is no guarantee that at the time of leaving this body, at the time of, breathing our last, you will be able to remember this, you will be able to utter Om. And that's the reason sadhana is required. Sadhana is to make that samskara a very strong and predominant samskara. Because that is a predominant samskara that will be on the surface and that will automatically manifest at that point of time. So you attain your goal. And that's the reason this sadhana we talk about so much. So, Omiti Ekaksharam Brahma. The Lord says that this is the Ekaksharam Brahma. So you just hold on to that. You will attain to the Supreme. And we have this Udgita Upasana in Chandogya Upanishad. We have discussed it, but reminding you, the spiritual things Sri Ramakrishna used to say and again. The spiritual things you have to hear. Because particularly in the present times in which we live, the worldly samskara is so dominant. We are struggling. We have confined ourselves to 4 walls of the monastery, right? And practically not much of worldly samskara apparently, because you are not so much exposed to the world. It's today, even for us as sadhakas, when you look at back, previous birth samskaras and this birth samskaras also, so many samskaras are there in the subconscious mind. When they rake up the subconscious mind in meditation and all the things, so much is coming out. Or when did I accumulate all this? When you reflect on this, you'll be surprised. So, but one day you have to clean that up. You have to clean the subconscious and then actually ultimately you will attain to Supreme. But you don't have to worry on that. Okay, let it come out as much as it. So let the material samskara, mundane samskara, okay, let it go and more of the spiritual samskara accumulate. That is called actually antakarana shuddhi. We need to purify the antakarana. We need to purify the inner instrument. We need to purify this sukshma sarira. Ativahika deha, they say. Ativahika deha is this mind, which is sukshma sarira. We are making a sukshma sarira. We have come into the world with a particular sukshma sarira and actually that gets transformed, modified as we do actions. Different samskaras are formed into the mind and another ativahika sarira, another sukshma sarira, another mind we create. And this subtle body, this sukshma sarira comes with us when we die for the next world. And that actually shapes the next body. So that becomes a kind of software for the next hardware, the next body, the next birth. So you are shaping the subtle body, and what will be the nature of your next body, that depends upon the kind of samskaras that you accumulate. And that depends upon the kind of actions that you are engaged in. So if you are engaged in spiritual sadhana, that means you are accumulating that good samskara. The samskara which purifies your inner instrument. And that will help you. If you don't get enlightenment, at least you will get a higher birth. And then actually you can continue your yoga sadhana in the next birth. Better instrument, and better instrument. Better birth. And ultimately you will get a birth like Buddha one day. In one birth. So your resolve will be so strong to know the truth. That birth you will get enlightenment. The only difference is that, right? Difference between you and Buddha and we between us and a great personality like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He wanted to know the truth, that's all. The body is for that, and if I don't realize, this body is useless for me. We don't have that much of strength. We don't have that much of willpower. This birth itself, I must attain to this. That kind of strength, that kind of will, that is the only difference between individual and individual. Somebody has a very strong will for yoga sadhana. Our will is very weak, meager, and that has to get strengthened. So, that has to get strengthened. It happens over a period of time. So, how strong your will is to know the truth. So, in this birth, you accumulate some spiritual samskara, but your dispassion is very strong. Your vairagya is so deep. Okay? You don't have absolutely no attraction for the world or things of the world, and you want to know the truth in this birth itself. You can have. So, that is the only criteria you need to fulfill. Not that actually God doesn't want to appear before us, God doesn't want to reveal Himself to us. He wants to reveal, but He is putting us through the test. What is the test? You want me or my world, my creation, which you want. If you want my creation, you will have to forego me. You will not be able to see me. Okay, if you want me, you have to forego my world, my creation. That's what, right? Krishna. And Duryodhana and Arjuna goes to Krishna. So Krishna says, one side is Yadavas and one side I am. You choose. So Duryodhana actually, gross. That's why he chose 10,000 Yadavas. And Krishna says, I don't fight also. Arjuna was wise. He chose the creator. He chose the creator. Duryodhana chose the creation in a way. And we all mostly, we are more of the Duryodhana blood. Sorry, I'm being a bit nasty. No, not all of us. So, taking the world, choosing the objective world, not the creator, but choosing the creation is the mistake that we do. Okay? Anyway, creator we don't see. But we can infer a creator, and then you have to long for, oh Lord, oh creator, I don't see you. I don't comprehend you. Okay, you reveal thyself to me. You have created this. It's a phenomenal creation you have done, including me. My body and mind, everything is done by you. We have not designed this body. It's not our idea. Somebody else's idea. God's idea that we need to have this physical body. Now we are suffering this. And so He knows why He has created this. So if you have that kind of longing, as Sri Ramakrishna would pray to the Divine Mother, oh Mother, I don't know your real nature. I don't care to understand you. Why? Because my buddhi is too limited. My intellect is too puny to fathom you. You're unfathomable. So it's a kind of blasphemy. How can I think that I can ever understand you? The Shiva Mahimna Stotra, what that Pushpadanta says, that's true. You need to remember that's the kind of mantra that is. Asita giri samam syat kajjale sindhu patre surataru varushaka lekani patramurvi likati yadi gruhitva sharada sarvakalam tadapi isha. Okay. Tadapi isha param nayati. So then, if Mother Sarada were to write, what is the parchment? The earth itself is the parchment. With the ocean actually is the ink pot. And Mother Sarada were to write, taking the best branch of the Kalpavruksha tree for pen, for eternity, for infinite period of time, still she will not be able to exhaust your glories, O Lord. That's how he summarizes what Lord is, what is infinite. What is infinite means that Pushpadanta expresses. But still I will praise you, I will chant you, I will speak of your glory, I will say you are this, you are that, according to my intellect. It is permissible, O Lord. It is allowed, right? You have given me only this much of intellect. With this much of intellect, I can only describe you like this. That's my limitation, not your limitation. But I am not saying that you are just this. I am not saying that you are just this. Because my intellect actually has this much of capacity only. But I know that I cannot go beyond this. But I know that you are much beyond. And there actually he expresses beautiful surrender, saying that if Mother Sarada herself were to write for eternity, taking the Mother Earth actually as the parchment, still she would not be able to exhaust your glories. When that is the case, how can I explain you? How can I sing you? How can I actually, praise you? But this is the understanding that I have. This is the buddhi, this much of buddhi that you have given me. That buddhi I use to praise you, to understand you. So this kind of attitude we need to have. So Sri Ramakrishna said, Divine Mother, I don't want to understand you, Mother, because I know I cannot understand. You reveal thyself to me, you exist. Why? How he has come to this conclusion? Because creation exists. Creation presupposes creator. You are the mother of this universe, so you reveal thyself to me. So when you say that kind of prayer, God, will come before you. So this Udgita Upasana, see, Omkara is also known as Pranava, and another name for this Pranava is Udgita. Gita means what? Singing. Why it is Udgita? Because this is sung everywhere. The Samagana. Samagana means that Sama actually, chants are sung. Where? At the time of Yajna. So what happens if you sing that? So when you sing Samagana and perform Yajna, the whole creation actually is sustained by Yajna. In Bhagavad Gita we have that sloka, Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyat anna sambhavaha Yajnat bhavati parjanyah yajnah karma sambhavaha. So Annad bhavanti bhutani. Bhutani creation exists because of food. So all beings need food. So in that Vedic period, this Udgita Upasana, there were three friends. They were doing this Udgita Upasana, Omkara Upasana. Omkara actually is the main sadhana for attaining to spiritual illumination. Silaka, Chaikitayana, the son of Chikitayana, and Pravahana, the son of the king of Panchala, the prince of Panchala. The other two were Brahmins. This Pravahana was Panchala. prince, Kshatriya. So they wanted to discuss about this Udgita Upasana in the court. And Pravahana says, you both being Brahmins, you just discuss, I will hear. So Chaikitayana and Silaka, he says, you both discuss about Udgita Upasana, I will just watch, I will just see. And then they say, no, it doesn't look nice if you are just be there as spectator. If there is any, problem with our argument, any discrepancy in our argument, you can intervene at any point of time. So Silaka and Chaikitayana, they tell this to Pravahana, the prince of Panchala. Then Shilaka asked the question to Chaikitayana, what is the base, what is the support, what is the substratum of Sama Upasana, I say, Sama Veda basically. It says to chant any mantra, you need to have Swara, right? Swara. So the Sama is based on Swara. Who answers this? Chaikitayana says, to whom? Shilaka. Shilaka asks, what is the base of Sama? So Chaikitayana answers, saying that Sama is based on Swara. So you have to chant something, Omkara. You have to chant, right? So when you will be able to chant only when you have throat, when you can make the sound. So Swara actually is the basis of Sama. Then Shilaka asks actually, so what is the basis of Swara? The basis of Swara is Prana. Okay, a dead body, can it chant something? Prana has to be there in the body, right? A living being, that too a human being alone, can chant something. So the basis of Swara is Prana. So what is the basis of Prana? Then he asks, food. Can you live without? Can you keep the Prana alive? Can you keep the Prana in your body without eating food? You may for 1 week, 10 days. Potti Sri Ramulu, I think 40 days he was there. But today he will have more than 4 days actually he will fall dead without food. So people of that age, just 60, 70 years back, and they had, comparatively greater strength. Okay, your Amara Nirahara Deksha, total, if you do it, I think 10 days you will die. So we are dependent on food. Our prana will stay in the body only when you take food. Deprive the body of food and the prana will depart the body comfortably. Maximum 10 days or 15 days it will be there. Afterwards it will depart. So the basis of swara is prana, the basis of prana is food. Okay, the basis of food, how do you get food? Water, right? There is no rain. How you can grow crops? You can't grow crops. Only when there is rain, crops will come. Only when the crops are the food is available. Only when you take food, actually your prana is sustained. Only when the prana is sustained, you can chant something. You can do yajna. So water is the basis of food. How does the water come? Where does the water come? Water comes from? Comes from cloud. That is our understanding. So if you are a believer in science, water comes from cloud. How does the cloud happen? Cloud happens just like that. That's our conclusion, right? No. Our people have said that. Cloud actually Varuna Devata. We say the Varuna Devata. So they say Swarga. When they say Swarga, not just the physical sphere they are talking about. There are higher forces in this universe. They are all cooperating with us. Every season, rainy season comes and clouds come and they rain and you get water, so you cultivate crops and we eat. We take things for granted. Suppose the clouds, they don't come. Monsoon fails. Varuna God actually is upset with us. 2 years and 3 years he has, withdrew clouds. He has withdrew rain from us. What happens? You are there, not there, right? There will be famine. So people have understood, Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha. There are certain forces, we are called devas, who work to satisfy the will of the Lord. He has entrusted to these deities these jobs and responsibilities, like Vayu goddess. Actually, it's not just an inanimate thing, nothing inanimate in this universe. Everything is actually the manifestation of consciousness. But we think actually inanimate things. The wind actually, there is a breeze, the wind flows, and we think, it just has to do its job and it's just doing that. No, they're all instructed by the Supreme Consciousness, the Supreme Lord, and so they're doing their bidding. And so this Varuna God actually comes and gives us rain, and because rain's crops are sustained. And so where does he stay? He stays in Swarga. So what is the basis of this water? Is Swarga, because rain God actually, when he is pleased with us, he gives the rain. Otherwise, if he gives excess also problem, if he gives less also problem. So we need to propitiate him. We need to propitiate gods, means through yajna they get propitiated, they get satisfied. Okay, this human being is a good human being. He's engaged in good actions. So I need to give him food through water. So he gives us the rain. That is the idea of yajna. Why should we do yajnas? So the Chaitanya answers up to this point and then he stops. He says, Sama Upasana, okay, will lead you up to this. Then the Silaka says that you are putting a limitation to Sama Upasana. You are putting a limitation to this sadhana, Omkara Upasana. Omkara spiritual practice, you are putting a limitation. You are saying that it ends with Swargaloka. And then Chaitanya says that I know only this much. And Shilaka says that no, you cannot put such limitations on Sama Upasana. Sama Upasana actually goes far beyond this. You don't know, you don't have enough knowledge. And if any Samopasaka sees this and if he says that your head may roll off and your head will fall off, they say. If any true Samopasaka, if he listens to this and says that the Samopasana ends with Swarga, whatever you have said is. And the Chaitanya surrenders, he says that I have only this much of understanding, I don't know anything beyond. Okay, everything is based on Swarga. Swarga is the culmination point, it's the end point of Samopasana. Then Shilaka takes up and says that. Then Chaitanya asks, you just tell me, you enlighten me. Then Shilaka says, Swarga also has a base. What is the base of Swarga? So these gods actually are sustained by us. In what way? They are dependent upon the yajnas that we perform. You know, when you pour oblations into the fire, that fire god carries that essence of yajna to those gods and they eat that and they get satisfied. So you need to propitiate gods, that is the idea. So if you don't perform yajna, we have discussed here, yajna is not just a physical yajna, not dravya yajna, and pouring oblations into the fire. Any kind of self-sacrifice is yajna. You have helped somebody, it's yajna. You have prayed for somebody, you have yajna. In whichever way you help, whichever way you do some good to the bhutas, some good to the living beings, you are doing a yajna. There are different kinds of yajna and various kinds of yajna and various levels of yajna. This is not the time to discuss about it. Some other time we shall look into that. So when you perform yajna, when you pour oblations into the fire, the essence of that fire actually, oblation actually, is carried by the fire god to those gods and propitiated by the yajna that you perform, and then they will cooperate with you, they will give rain and all other things will happen. So, Silaka says that yajna is not the end point of Samopasana, it is the earth. So, what is the substratum? The earth actually is the end point because here the beings exist, prani exist, man is here, and so man is the support of Swarga, he says. Because we are doing yajnas, and with that actually gods are sustained. In a way, we are the support of gods also. But if you don't perform yajnas, they will be upset with us, they will be offended by us because you are not actually feeding them. You are depriving them of their nourishment. Then they will get annoyed with you and then they stop the work that they are doing. And that results in actually lack of rain kind of thing. That is the idea. Such a yajna must happen on earth. So this yajna sustains heaven. And that's the reason actually the earth is the culmination point of Samopasana. The end point of Samopasana is this. And then at this point of time, Pravahana intervenes and he says, Oh Silaka, you are also putting a limitation on Samopasana. This is not the end point. This is not the culmination of Samopasana. There is something more, something beyond. If any other true Sama Upasaka, a practitioner of this Omkara Upasana, if he comes here and says that your heads might roll off, you both of them actually will be headless. Your heads will fall on the ground, he says, if anybody curses. And Pravahana says, but I am not going to pronounce any such curse upon you. Both of them surrender to Pravahana. Then Pravahana, we know only up to this point. Silaka says, I know actually the earth actually is the end point because yajnas are performed by man, and only when the yajnas are performed, the heaven is sustained, the gods are sustained on yajna, sustained by yajna. So now actually he says, up to this only I know. So if you know more about this, you just enlighten me. And then Pravahana says, what is the support of the earth? Shilaka asks. The earth actually rests. Where it rests? It rests in space, right? It's simple logic. The earth is a ball, spherical ball. Where it is floating? It is floating in the space, right? It is the space which sustains the earth. The earth is being held by space. The space is the very form of Parabrahman. Akasha we say. Akasha among the 5 bhutas, Akasha is the subtlest of all the bhutas and earth actually the grossest. So the Akasha, this subtle element, the subtle of the 5 elements, is the substratum, is the basis of all the lokas including the earth. And this Akasha actually is a symbol of Parabrahman. Beyond Akasha, beyond this subtle space, lies the Parabrahman. Whoever worships this Akasha or space as a form of Parabrahman through Omkara, that individual will gain everything of this universe. And also the next, he will become all powerful. He will know the Parabrahman. He will know the supreme truth. So this is the discussion, that happened between 3 of them. And the conclusion of Pravahana is this. So this Omkara actually is the ultimate sadhana. It takes you to nirvana straight, provided you have the faith and you hold on to the sadhana. It doesn't just end with Swarga or it doesn't end with earth, it goes beyond all that and it goes to Parabrahman. So it's a kind of bridge, it's kind of link between the gross and the subtle. So, but we need to have faith in it. It's not just in that way, faith in the sense, the faith of the Semitic religions, not that kind of faith. It's a science only. But to engage in sadhana for a prolonged period of time, this sadhana will produce me the desired result. That faith you need to have. Otherwise, you will not be able to hold on to your sadhana for a longer period of time. Okay? If you don't have faith that it will give me the desired result, okay, afterwards you will give it up. That's what is happening, right? We want quick results today. In yoga sadhana also. In material world also we want quick sadhana. Somebody sits for an exam and immediately wants to crack it and you will get it. But there in the spiritual sadhana, in the spiritual world, you will have to wait some time for births. A few lives you have to wait to get to the desired result. Nirvana is not a one birth job, definitely. The way we are now, the way we are constituted, the kind of strength that we have, physical and intellectual strength and moral strength. Definitely, many of them actually they don't have this as the goal, first place. And then doing sadhana, there are so many obstacles, so many hindrances. It's very difficult to cultivate even little dispassion. Okay, why you talk about nirvana? So it's a long, definitely, it's a long journey. The way things are now, okay, first of all, it's not even the aspiration of the people. How many do you think, what percentage of the people have God realization as their goal and object in life? You have forgotten even the goal itself. And you get blues and blues and blues, birth after birth. And then in birth, you want to know the mystery of death when you are alive. The fear of death is because of this basically. Because we don't know what lies beyond. Why do you think man fears death? Death is a very simple thing, according to our culture, Now, the spirit is entangled in body and mind. What is happening at the point of death? It's a temporarily, the spirit actually getting disjoined from Jada, insentient. This body and mind are insentient, means Jada. They don't have life in it. It is consciousness which animates these two. At the time of death, what is happening? The spirit actually is getting disjoined from the matter, from the insentient, Jada Padartha. Body and mind both are Jada. It's a temporary separation. And again, actually, when you enter into another body and take up another body, again life happens. So death is actually a brief intervention between life and life. Because you don't know even this secret and that's why there is a fear. So is there, but what is nirvana? Nirvana is permanent disjunction of the spirit from the matter. So matter is left behind and spirit merges into spirit. That is actually that union into the supreme consciousness is nirvana. Temporary disjunction actually, temporary separation is called death. And when the consciousness actually is entangled in the matter, okay, and that is life. So death is superior to life. Death is at least a temporary disjunction of the consciousness from the matter. And nirvana is permanent disjunction. There is no association. The spirit actually is completely disassociated from the matter. Spirit exists as matter. Spirit exists as spirit. It doesn't need the support of matter. Rather, it supports the matter. It is a substratum. So once you get to that substratum, once you get to that base, and you have known everything. Once you have known the source of the universe, you have known everything about the universe. The mystery of the universe is revealed to you. You have understood it. And there is no rebirth thereafter. And that is nirvana. So to come out of the cycle of birth and death is the objective of life. How many people understand this? I am talking about the objective. That is the level of ignorance that we have in this Kali Yuga. And there is suffering. Naturally, suffering will be automatic. At this level of ignorance, if the suffering doesn't come, how else it will come, you tell me? We are not figured out even the objective of life. Our people are saying, Rishis are saying, our scriptures are saying, oh man, this is... You may not attain to supreme consciousness in this birth itself, at least a little endeavor, a little effort you make. So preoccupied with the things of mundane. That this is the only culture, this is the only civilization which talks about yoga in its entirety, which understands yoga, which understands the purpose of life. And we also have given that up. The source, our strength, our vitality is there. The vitality lies in yoga. Yoga balame balam. The power, strength of yoga is real strength. There are various factors, there are various forces working against us. This is called Maya. So Maya is, she is at her career best in Kali Yuga. So she works with maximum force. She becomes so powerful and so strong. She deludes everybody without an exception. She deludes everybody. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to call it world bewitching Maya. Oh mother, your Maya is so wonderful, so profound, and so complete and so perfect. So much so that the person is so sunk so deep into Maya, he doesn't even know that he is deep into Maya. So once you have to understand that I am into Maya, I am just sunk in Maya, and then you will strive to come out of that right existence. But if you don't even understand that you exist in Maya, you are already sunk deep into Maya, then you will never even struggle to come out of it, right? That is the level of ignorance we have, unfortunately, in this Yoga Bhumi. So the goal of life, is to realize the truth, is to come out of this cycle of transmigration of death and life is a cycle. And this Omkara Upasana is the easiest and the simplest of the Upasanas. For that you need to have little faith. When I said faith, you need to understand it in the right way. Only when you have faith that the sadhana will give you the desired result, you will be able to embark on the journey, you will be able to do the practice. Otherwise, will I get the realization if I do this Omkara Upasana? Every time you have doubt, every day you have doubt, okay, then you will have automatically, you will give up the sadhana, you will give up the practice. First, this, yes. Who is saying this? The Rishis are saying. Who are they? Who had practiced and experienced the truth. Not an intellectual conviction for them. The spiritual realization, it's an experiential reality. Truth actually is an experiential reality for these sages. We have these modern sages, Swamiji, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharshi. Experiential reality, the self-realization need not be an intellectual conviction. We need to transcend. First, you need to have intellectual clarity, and afterwards you have to engage in sadhana. You do as much as is possible to you, but don't give up on sadhana. Don't give up hope. As much as Omkara, any time in the day you can keep chanting and chanting and chanting. If you close your eyes and every day in 15-20 minutes, just Om. Samskara, the spiritual samskara gets deep rooted. Slowly, you are igniting the fire of Kundalini. Little spark, actually, you are putting it. And one day it will emanate. Conflagration it becomes. That will have the spiritual awakening. Then it will be odd. It will be okay. Then, when you get that, what you have to hear, the words of what the great mystics have said on that. I'm not telling it from my own experience. So, what they have said about this experience, on how profound it is, you will be astonished. You will be dumbstruck. Oh, this is my real nature. It is so profound. Why have I delayed it for so long? I could have engaged in sadhana much earlier. Unnecessarily, I wasted many births. That would be the regret that you will have. I should not have invested so much of time and energy for the unreal world. I could have embarked, I could have started off my journey much earlier. Oh, I said that. Koayam Atma Nabaschadihi. Where is this Atman and where is this body? So much difference, it cannot be explained in words. That much of difference is there between, our real existence and the present existence, the body-based existence. Is very despicable, very mean, very loathsome, and very disgusting existence. So all mystics have said that the world has no rhyme or reason. At this level of body and mind, you cannot solve the problem of life. This is total Maya, and you need to transcend it. And there lies Brahman, there lies truth. And so, sooner the better. The conclusion is, sooner the better. The sooner you embark on sadhana, the better for you and also for other people who are associated with you. We shall stop here for today. Let us just meditate for 2 minutes before we disperse.